So, the third class on ratio analysis, and today's discussion of ratios are debt to equity ratio. The debt to equity ratio is formula is long-term debt by shareholders fund. Now, what is the long-term debt? Means the debt or the loan which is taken by the firm for a longer period. That is the long-term borrowings in which we can write debentures, loans, and public deposits. All these type of borrowings represents the long-term borrowings, and long-term provisions is the provident fund. That is the employee benefit scheme which an employee gets after the retirement. Now, the shareholders fund. Here we have got two formulas for the shareholders fund. One is the equity share capital plus preference share capital. All the reserves, security premium, surpluses, losses, underwriting commission, preliminary and discount. This should be written off from the reserve and surpluses. And the second formula is tangible, all the fixed assets, intangible goodwill, patents, non-current investment, loans and advances, current assets. Means total of all the assets minus current liabilities, long-term borrowings and long-term provisions. Second formula is debt to total asset ratio. Formula is long-term debt by total asset. And the total asset comprises of tangible, intangible, non-current investment, loans and advances and current assets. And the final is proprietary ratio, that is shareholder fund by total asset. In the earlier formula we are known to the shareholder fund concept. We have to add equity, preference, reserve, securities premium, and total assets mean fixed assets plus intangible assets plus investment, loans, current assets. Clear? So today we are going to start some questions on these three formulas, and the first sum is going to be question number 27 from your book, that is T.S. Garewal. The question is calculate the debt to equity ratio. We have got share capital of rupees 5 lakh, general reserve of 2 lakh, surplus is 3 lakh, debentures, long-term provisions, trade payable, outstanding liability. Now, we have to find debt to equity ratio. So before finding the ratio, we can find long-term provisions, which is already given in the book, that is 50,000. Now, long-term borrowings means debentures. Therefore, long-term debt will be 7 lakh plus 50, that is 7 lakh 50,000. Clear? And shareholder fund, SHF, full form of SHF is shareholder fund, and shareholder fund comprises of share capital, reserves and surpluses. Clear? That is 10 lakh. Therefore, debt to equity ratio, that is DER, will be long-term debt by shareholder fund, that is 7 lakh 50 by 10 lakh is equals to 0.75 by 1, that is 0.75 is to 1. This one is question number 27. Now, question number 28. Total assets is 2 lakh 60, total debt is 1 lakh 80, current liability 20, and calculate the debt equity ratio. Now, for the debt equity ratio, we need total debt, we need long-term debt. So for long-term debt, we have to deduct current liabilities from total debt, because current liability is one type of short-term debt. So from total debt, if we deduct the short-term debt, we can find long-term debt, that is 160. Clear? And for SHF, just write down the total assets, and from here you can deduct current liabilities and long-term debt. It will become 80,000. Therefore, DER, that is 160 divided by 80, that is 2 by 1. Answer will be 2:1. Now, question number 31. See here. Long term borrowing is 420 and long term provision is 140. So long term debt, we can find it easily just by adding long term borrowings and long term provisions, that is 560. And from SHF we have to use the formula from the asset concept. We have got total assets, fixed assets less depreciation. If depreciation is there, then we have to deduct it from the fixed assets. Next is non-current investment, loans and advances, current assets. Just add up all the assets and deduct the liabilities. You will get the SHF. It will be 7 lakh plus 14 plus 56, 350 minus 280, 420, 140. That is 280. Therefore DER equal to 560 by 280, that is 2:1. Now coming to question number 35, we have to find here proprietary ratio and debt equity ratio. So for debt equity ratio we need long term debts, and for long term debts we required provisions and borrowings, which is already given in the sum. The total of long term debt will be 8 lakh. Clear? Now for SHF, shareholder fund, long non-current assets. Non-current assets means fixed assets and investments. Now the current asset is 8 lakh. Deduct the current liabilities, long-term debts and long-term provisions. So you can get 16, that is 4 lakh. So therefore debt equity ratio will be long-term debt by shareholder fund, that is 2/1, 2:1. And for the proprietary ratio formula is SHF by total asset. So SHF is 4 lakh, and your total asset means what? Non-current assets and current asset, that is 16 lakh. That is 1/4, 0.25 by 1, that is 0.25:1. Next one is debt to total assets. Now debt, again we have to find the long-term debt, and for long-term debt we have to deduct short-term borrowings, that is a short-term loan, from the total debt, so that we can get long-term debt. And the SHF is already given, which is 24 lakh. Clear? So from SHF we can find the total assets. See, total assets SHF, and from SHF if we deduct current liability, long-term debt and short-term borrowings, debt to total asset, that is SHF. For SHF is 24 lakh, so we have to deduct from SHF. The shareholder fund comprises of what? So we have to add up, the 24 and 4, 28, 28 and 20, it's 48 lakh. Sorry, we have to add up this one. Okay, now debt to total asset, that is debt is 24 lakh and total asset is 48 lakh. This 1/2, that is 1:2. Again, debt to total assets. For total assets, we can write fixed asset plus investments plus advances, current assets, and minus of depreciation. So 15 lakh, just add up the total ratio. 15 lakh, 18 minus 3, that is 15, 150, 750, that is 24 lakh. And the total debt, long term debt is 9 lakh plus 3 lakh provisions and borrowings, that is 12 lakh. Okay, therefore debt to total asset will be 12 lakh by 24 lakh, 1 by 2, that is 1 is to 2. So these are the ratios: debt to equity, debt to total assets, and proprietary ratio.